40 films in just 2 years, awards, magazine covers. Then at 24 years old, Désirée Cousteau walked away from everything and vanished. No one knows where she is today. This is why. This is Désirée Cousteau, born Deborah Huff. For 4 years in the late 1970s, she was one of the most recognized performers in Golden Age adult cinema. Then she made a choice that shocked everyone who knew her and disappeared completely. Today, you're going to discover the real story behind her rise, the moment she walked away, and why her decision still matters. Désirée Cousteau was born in 1956 in Savannah, Georgia. Her real name, Deborah Huff. By her late teens, she'd moved to San Francisco right in the heart of the 70s sexual revolution. The city was alive with artistic experimentation. Underground cinema was exploding, and in 1976, at just 20 years old, Deborah made a decision. She entered the adult film industry. But this wasn't desperation. She chose the name Désirée Cousteau, and she approached the work as an actress. What happened next was unprecedented. In just 2 years, 1977 and 1978, Desiree appeared in over 40 films. She won multiple awards. Mainstream publications like Gallery magazine featured her. Critics in the adult industry called her one of the most talented performers of the era. Directors wanted to work with her because she could actually act. She had presence. She understood that cinema, even controversial cinema, could be art. And for a brief moment, in the late 70s, adult film was almost respectable, and Désirée Cousteau was the face of that moment. At 21 years old, Desiree was at the top of an industry that most of society condemned. She was making money. She had fame. She had creative control, something rare for women in any part of Hollywood, let alone adult film. But here's what the magazines didn't report. Behind the scenes, everything was about to change. The golden age was ending, and Desiree saw it coming. In 1980, Désirée Cousteau made a choice that no one expected. By 80s, the golden age of adult cinema was over. Federal obscenity prosecutions were increasing. The artistic vision that had defined the late 70s was being replaced by something cheaper and more exploitative. The industry that had briefly felt like legitimate cinema was going back underground. But there was something else, something the public never saw. Behind the scenes, performers were losing control. Studios were cutting corners on safety. The HIV/AIDS crisis was less than a year away, though no one knew it yet, and Desiree, who had always insisted on professionalism, saw the writing on the wall. So at 24 years old, at the peak of her career, Désirée Cousteau did something radical. She quit. No farewell tour, no big announcement, she simply walked away. But here's the part that makes her story different from almost every other performer of that era. She had the power to leave, while other performers were trapped by debt, by addiction, by lack of options. Desiree had been strategic. She'd saved her money. She'd kept her real identity, Deborah Huff, completely private. She had an exit strategy, and in 1980, she executed it. Years later, in rare interviews, Desiree would explain her reasoning. She'd achieved what she set out to do. She'd proven that performers in adult cinema could be artists, not just objects. She'd made enough money to be financially independent, and most importantly, she'd never lost control of her own story. The industry tried to pull her back. Producers offered more money. Directors promised better projects. Fans wanted her return. But Desiree had made her decision, and unlike so many in her position, she had the power to make it stick. And then, Désirée Cousteau did something even more remarkable. She disappeared. She went back to being Deborah Huff. She built a private life. She refused to be defined by 4 years of work. And to this day, her current whereabouts are unknown, not because she's hiding in shame, but because she chose privacy. And that choice deserves respect. Today, decades later, Désirée Cousteau's influence is everywhere, even if most people don't know her name. Film historians now recognize the golden age of adult cinema in the 70s as a unique cultural moment. These films had plots, character development, cinematography. They were attempting to be art. And Desiree's work? It's been preserved in film archives. Scholars study it not for prurience, but for cultural significance. Because she was part of a moment when boundaries were being tested, when art and commerce and sexuality all collided in 1970s Hollywood. But more than that, every conversation today about sex worker rights, about agency, about choice, about destigmatization, Désirée Cousteau lived those principles in the 1970s. She proved that you could work in a stigmatized industry and still maintain your dignity, that you could be both an object of desire and a subject with power, that you could write your own story even when society tried to write it for you. She made her choices with full awareness. She succeeded on her own terms. And she left on her own terms. In an era when women in her profession rarely had power, Désirée Cousteau never gave hers away. And that's why, decades later, her story is still being told. If you love untold stories like this, stories about forgotten icons who changed cinema history, I make new videos every week diving into the lives Hollywood forgot. Click that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. And here's where you come in. Drop a comment right now telling me which forgotten Hollywood figure you want me to cover next. Seriously, I read every comment, and your suggestions shape this channel.